You know what? It's TNA episodes like these that actually make me really proud to know that my ancestors came from Scotland. Hey, what's up and how's it going all in my viewers? Well, I'm so glad that you have took your time to watch this video right here today on the Mick Rock and Bolt Wrestling Review Show. And I am your co-host, Mike McRock, and last night was Impact Wrestling from Glasgow, Scotland. The show started off with a little bit of a backstage mishap between Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, and the bad guys, Magnus, EC3, and Rockstar Spud. And the funny thing is, they go from that in seconds to having Magnus, EC3, and Spud coming out in the entrance. So they must have been near the entrance before when all that was taking place. Just something that I like to point out. And basically, Magnus cut a promo and he talked about how he bet Sting the week before and how he dethroned Jeff Hardy, as well as AJ Styles talking about dethroning all the heroes in TNA. And I thought, Magnus, I thought was actually pretty good on the microphone. He cut actually a realistic promo, how he talked about business in general and how things work in the business aspect of the pro wrestling business. And I thought, he was actually pretty good. He was generating some heat from the crowd. And to me, when Magnus cuts a promo, he looks better as a heel talking than he does wrestling, because they make him look like a whiny bitch for some reason. When they put him in situations that he comes off as a weak wrestler in the ring, a weak performer in the ring, and somehow manages to pull off a good promo in the ring. So that, to me, that's a little interesting, and I really like the little things, the antics from Rockstar Spud, fixing the champion's face and stuff like that. And so really, I'm watching his promo and I'm watching Rockstar Spud at the same time, and it's like, there's no comparison. And after that, we saw a little tease, if you will, from Magnus and EC3. There's a little bit of tension going on. I like it, even though it's a little too early for this regime to have some tension. I like that EC3 has that jealous factor for Magnus. Even ever since he won the championship, you could tell that EC3 is jealous of Magnus and wants to be that guy to be the champion. So it makes sense on the character aspect of Ethan Carter III, the nephew of Dixie Carter, the rich asshole that everyone can't stand. So, like I said, it makes logical sense for EC3 to be jealous of the champion. And after that, we saw Angle and Joe come out. They interrupt, and it was Angle and Samoa Joe talking about how they invited Magnus into the main event Mafia, and how basically how he sold out and aligned himself with Dixie Carter, and they make a tag team match for later on tonight, where if Angle or Samoa Joe pins the champion, they automatically become the #1 contender. But if Angle and Joe lose, they will be no longer in TNA. And so this is setting up to be a really good payoff for a certain dominant force. I'm not going to name the name just yet, but you'll know who it is if you watch the episode, and you know who I'm talking about. Later on, we saw a tag team match, a Knockouts tag team match on TNA. It was Madison Rayne and Velvet Sky with a Beautiful People reunion, taking on Gail Kim and Lady Tapa, Madison Rayne being the Knockouts champion. I do have mixed feelings about that. The whole thing about bringing in past Knockouts to be the champion. not a smart move for TNA. You want your Knockouts division to grow. You bring in new talent, little things like that. And to me, this was a very short squash match where you had Velvet Sky get the win, get the pin over Gail Kim. And when TNA is losing hope of the Knockouts division when you have a short match, it's kind of like, the WWE when they put on a tag team Divas match. It's really short and it's really messy. So, this happened tonight on TNA. It's the only issue I had while I was watching the show, because there's not a lot of big issues I had while I was watching this episode that hail from Glasgow, Scotland. And to me, that makes a good show. But going back to this Knockouts match, you had Gail Kim being the one that gets pinned. And that just goes to show how they think of Gail Kim now. She was the Knockouts champion, and now she's nothing. So now, the question I have is that how is TNA going to use Gail Kim now in the Knockouts division because of what happened? And they really should do something with Lady Tapa right now. Have her turn on Gail Kim, use her a lot more, have her as that intimidating force that everyone just wants to get the F out of this room, kind of situation. I like to see that with Lady Tapa. And having Velvet Sky being the one that gets the win, to me, that just goes to show that TNA doesn't care about their champion, and that this felt second rate when it came to this very short match. What happened after that is that we saw Chris Sabin come out and basically trash Velvet Sky for not being the perfect girlfriend, and stuff like that, etc., etc. Until Velvet Sky just said, "I've had enough, and I'm done." The ultimate slap in the face to Chris Sabin, and I thought this worked pretty good, because Velvet Sky is not someone to be used in the background. She should be in the forefront in the Knockouts division, and to have her be used properly. So I think that was a smart decision based on the whole idea of Velvet Sky. Moving on, we saw a little backstage segment between Angle and Samoa Joe going into a room where Bobby Roode was, and they just lay the intimidating the whole intimidating factor to Bobby Roode. They got up on his face, Samoa Joe choking Bobby Roode to make sure he doesn't interfere in the match. But something tells me that Bobby Roode will eventually turn face, because later on we saw him in a backstage segment with Dixie Carter, basically telling Dixie Carter is that you owe me one, and if you don't give me what I want, I will rebel and stuff like that. And so I can definitely see something happening with Bobby Roode in the weeks to come on TNA. We also saw a bit of a long promo, but I really actually enjoyed it. It was James Storm and Gunner. And basically what happened was that James Storm came out first. He talked about the history with Gunner, and calls him out. He just wants to put an end to all this, get to the bottom of what's going on between the two of them. What happened was that Gunner came out and he talked about how he got his nickname Gunner in the war, and he also talked about sacrificing his family and stuff that happened in the war stories. And to me, Gunner really improved on the microphone. He managed to come off as really believable. And there was something that Gunner done in his promo that it's rare and you don't see very often. The way the crowd reacted, they were chanting "what" at first when Gunner was talking, but he turned it into USA chants. In Glasgow, Scotland? Yeah, but you get what I'm saying. He managed to take an insult of a chant to a really good chant, and that's something that the Gunner done very well. And like I said, his promo was very believable. It was really really good, and it kind of sucked me in a little, and I kind of got caught up in the moment. So I thought overall that segment worked pretty well. And then after that, basically what happened was that they are now a team. They are working together now, and I'm still waiting for someone to turn heel. It hasn't happened yet. And then Christopher Daniels and Kaz came out and basically insulted James Storm and Gunner, turned into a match, the tag team match, where James Storm and Gunner went over in the match, and I'm still waiting for someone to turn heel. Hasn't happened. I do like that it hasn't happened because, you can use this whole false sense of a security thing on the part of the Gunner. Maybe James Storm is fooling Gunner to align himself back with Gunner. Something like that could possibly work if James Storm were to turn heel. It would make sense because, you could put Gunner over as a babyface to be the guy next in line for the championship that Magnus is holding right now. So we'll see what happens on the weeks to come on TNA. He also saw Rockstar Spud in the ring, and he basically, what he wants to do is just get to the chase. He wants to know who the new investor is for TNA Impact Wrestling. And who did he get for his trouble? The American Wolves. And I really like this segment, how it played out. I mean, the American Wolves is one thing, but really, to me, Rockstar Spud really owned this segment. He really carried it. The way he was just going off on the American Wolves, basically getting in their face to find out who the investor was and doing the whole interrogation techniques, etc., etc. And he was really cracking me up. This guy, Rockstar Spud, was hilarious in this promo. Basically trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to find out who the investor is. And he slapped Davey Richards for his troubles. Not very classy, but, I did really enjoy this whole thing with Rockstar Spud and the American Wolves. The American Wolves played it off pretty well, and you could tell that they really like what's going on. And it really shows in their faces that that this segment actually worked out pretty well, and basically the American Wolves just double teamed Rockstar Spud, and David Richards got on the microphone and said, "You will find out who the investor is when the world finds out." So, like I said, I really like that segment. It was a really good promo from both Rockstar Spud and the American Wolves, and like I said, Rockstar Spud really carried that promo. Also, we saw the Bromans taking out Eric Young and the Monster Abyss, and it was a tag team title match, and I thought, this match was pretty entertaining. Now, there was a point where you saw Zema Ion in the corner, and Abyss was choking him out, and the ref was counting 5, and he was part of the match? That was a little weird. But overall, I thought this was a really good, entertaining match. And what happened was that Abyss attacked the referee, gave him the shock treatment, and then chokeslammed Eric Young. That chokeslam looked devastating. I think Eric Young could have sold that chokeslam a little more to not get up from it and not cut the promo where he challenges Abyss to a Monster's Ball. It would make that move a lot more devastating if Eric Young kind of sold it just a little bit more right. But I thought this segment was actually pretty good. We got something to look forward to next week. Eric Young versus Abyss in the Monster's Ball. I guess the experiment is over. So I'll see what happens next week on Impact Wrestling. We also saw a little skip it with Samuel Shaw and Christy Hemme, where Christy Hemme was in his apartment, and they kind of take the tour, and I really like it. I like that how they showed Samuel Shaw's character traits throughout that 1.5 minute promo. I like how they got a point across of him being a knee freak, being obsessive with the whole posters with Christy Hemme and the hair on that big poster that he put something on. So I thought, this segment actually worked pretty well, and TNA's doing something right when something comes off really creepy and disturbing, and it just worked. And that's all I have to say about that. We also saw Bully Ray come out, cut a promo, basically addressing Mr. Anderson and how he fell with the aces and eights, and how he took his livelihood, etc., etc. Came out with a coffin, and Mr. Anderson came out and cut his promo, basically saying that I will end you once and for all. And they talk about the whole personal issues with Anderson's wife and his kids. But as I was watching that, doesn't the coffin look small? Is that made for Rockstar Spud? I mean, for the love of God, I don't think Anderson, even Bully Ray, could fit in that coffin. Just a nitpicky issue I had. And with that said, this whole thing with Bully Ray and Mr. Anderson, to me, really doesn't need to continue. And it's not really necessary, but I do like where it's going. I think Bully Ray should take some time off and have Mr. Anderson be involved in a new feud. But I really did enjoy this segment in the same time. It was just one of those things, where you get excited to see something happen next week or whenever the case is with this coffin match. I don't, like I said, I don't think Bully Ray could fit in that thing, even let alone Mr. Anderson. So I think that they really should change the size of the coffin, bring a different one in, bring a lot bigger one in, for the love of God. But anyway, moving on. And then after that, we saw a few backstage segments where Dixie Carter was kind of furious to trying to get the bottom of the who knew who the investor is, and etc., etc. So really the focus on this episode was the investor, how we saw the American Wolves outside of this vehicle, and basically, there's this cameraman trying to find out who the investor is, and we only saw the feet when he came out of the vehicle, so I like how they played on that. And after that, the main event happened. Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle versus Magnus and Ethan Carter III. Finally, Samoa Joe is used right on TNA. I like where they're going with him. I like how he's being used properly as a dominant force in TNA. How he cut promos in the ring even after the match, and how he's the #1 contender to Magnus' World Heavyweight Championship. I really enjoy what TNA is doing with Samoa Joe. Kurt Angle got on the microphone after the match and he talked about being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Time to get your paycheck out, Dixie Carter, and induct me into the Hall of Fame. And what I like is that throughout that match, we saw a little thing where Samoa Joe has a little reminiscent of The Undertaker, how he comes off as similar as The Undertaker, being that dominant force. When he has a guy cornered and he's punching him and then he intimidates the ref, it's something The Undertaker does as well. So I like, those little things that Samoa Joe does in the ring, how he comes off as that intimidating force. To me, while I was watching that, there's two guys that I really actually enjoyed throughout that match. And one of them, like I said, was Samoa Joe. And Ethan Carter as well. To me, I thought Ethan Carter performed actually pretty well in the ring. And there's, that little tension between him and Magnus. And we'll see where this goes on TNA. And overall, this show was really, really great. And I'll get to save the best for last. The new investor is MVP. Now, I won't make any judgments just yet. I want to see how this plays out for MVP, but I do have a couple of questions. Now, because MVP was that guy who was a mid-carder wrestler in WWE, I'm wondering if he's going to be how he's going to come off as a manager leading role. This is something different for MVP, so we don't know how this is going to play out for MVP. I hope it plays out well for him. Now, what I like is that, WWE, TNA is doing something right when people are going back and forth to say, oh, this is a bad move, oh, this is a good move. Just let that sink in for a second. Yeah. It's just a little thing I like to point out where, TNA is doing something good when you have people debating about MVP being the new investor. Just something like that works. And overall, MVP being a new investor, like I said, I won't make any judgments just yet. I like to see how it plays out, and I think, to me, it was well executed. It was well timed of how they made MVP's debut as the new investor. How the American Wolves came out first from side to side, and then you had MVP go right in the middle, raise his hand. I thought that was well executed to close off this episode of TNA. So what did you think of last night's episode? Comment below and let me know. And while you're at it, you can also comment, rate, subscribe on our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. And to all you viewers watching, get plenty of rest and always do your best.